Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Adobe Live. I'm your host, Fabiola Lara. Today on the stream, we're joined by brand and web designer Kenzi Green. Are you excited to show us your process today, Kenzi?
Yes, I'm so excited.
Kenzi's going to be showing us how to build a brand from scratch today, so stick around for that. But before we get started, if you missed the previous stream, you can view the replay on Behance or YouTube. So make sure to bookmark this page so you can come back to it whenever you need. Plus, check out photographer Bella Kotak as she edits and editorial fantasy photos in Photoshop. Finally, don't miss the Creative Encore Challenge of the Illustrator Creative Challenges with Julia Vaca every weekday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific, right before this stream. Tune in and challenge yourself with a new prompt each and every day. Now, if you're tuning in from YouTube, please come on over to Behance by heading to behance.net/Adobe Live. You'll get the most interactive experience on Behance. We can answer all of your questions here while we learn from Kenzi. And remember, once again, you can watch the live streams even when we're offline. So bookmark this page so you can come back to it and watch all of Kenzi's magic in a replay whenever you need a little refresh. Now, Kenzi, I'm going to check out the chat here. Hello, Steve. Hello, Voodoo Val. Hello, Voodoo Val and Paco. Shout out to you guys for being here today. All right, Kenzi, why don't you show us what we're going to get into today?
Yeah, so would you like me to go ahead and kind of share my Adobe Illustrator file or just tell a little bit more about myself, my background?
Yes. So start off by introducing yourself and then tell us what we're going to be working on.
All right, so my name is Kenzi. I am the brand and web designer behind Kenzi Green Design. I do have a bachelor's degree in design, and I started my business in 2018 while I was attending design school. Graduated in June of 2019, fully self-employed, and since then I have worked alongside 300 plus creative business owners, entrepreneurs, and all sorts of different brands. So I wanted to just kind of share a quick little look into my portfolio. So I do brand myself as a luxury designer. A lot of the clients I work with are people who have already been in business for a few years and are usually at a point where they're really ready to rebrand and level up. So I do actually kind of have two distinguished styles, and one is really like luxe and minimalist, kind of like this chocolate brand here. And then my other style is like bold and fun and out there, and that's kind of what we're going to be working on today for the brand identity I want to create. Here's a bit more of my work. I have done photographers, I've worked with event planners, I've also worked with yoga therapists and
So many amazing clients here. I love seeing those little illustrated elements in your brand design as well.
Yeah, thank you. I've worked with so many different, and this is just, a tip of the iceberg in my portfolio.
Amazing. So what are we going to get into today?
So today I will go ahead and pull up this. I want to create a syrup brand. Now, kind of wanted to do this because one, I do enjoy working with the food industry, but also I feel like that's not something I see a lot. So I really wanted to create something that I haven't seen too much of. And I've already kind of gone ahead and done some of the initial kind of strategy research, and I will more than happy to take you guys through the whole overview and findings I got before, we kind of dig into actually designing stuff.
Yeah, that would be lovely. I feel like everyone always wants to know just exactly how we get from point A to point Z in this case. So let's go through all of this and tell us what your thinking is so we have a better understanding of the project.
Yeah, so I am going to be calling this brand Juliana's Syrup. Now, my whole overview or idea is that this is a new family-friendly syrup brand designed to make breakfast tasty, joyful, and fun. And here's kind of the brand mission statement I developed, and it is helping families celebrate the joy of breakfast time with organic, flavorful syrups. So kind of thinking, when you go into the store and you go to the syrup aisle, there's a lot of different syrups. Typically,
Yes.
you see reds. I want to go at this with a totally different color, and I do have some examples of that we'll look at in just a moment here. But kind of that area is where I envision this syrup brand and, the bottle being placed. As we go over here, here's some of the buzzwords: joyful, organic, youthful, family friendly. So think, family oriented people, people who, make time for breakfast and really care about celebrating that daily moment with their families. Here's some core values, inclusion, honesty, compassion, positivity, a really uplifting, happy, fun brand overall.
I can't wait to get into it. This brand seems really, really fun. And I feel like you're totally right. What we see in the syrup aisle, let's say in the breakfast aisle, tends to all kind of look similar. So I'm excited to see what you create to kind of break away from that.
So here's some of those examples. And
Yes.
as I was saying before, like red, 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 like red is almost everywhere. I'd say this one in the upper right is probably like the closest to, maybe the approach I'm taking. But I honestly couldn't believe that there were this many with this almost same exact color palette, considering like there's so many that look very, very similar.
Yeah, it probably has to do with that like color theory of like red and yellow making you hungry or something like that. Maybe that's what they're going for. That's making them all look kind of the same.
Oh yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. And, my approach is I want it to blend in, not to the point where it's like, what in the world is that? But still be unique in a way that's going to catch somebody's eye to the point where they're still willing to buy it and still be enticed by the design in itself.
Yeah, it's a fine like balance between fitting into the category, but also standing out from your competitors.
All right, so as we move over here, I didn't spend, too much time on this, but general overview of the target audience, people that are going to be buying this are probably single parents, middle upper class, couples who have children, and grandparents who value, their quality of life, the time they spend with their grandchildren, all very family oriented people who, again, take time to make that breakfast and have that part of their day.
Yes, I love that you're thinking through all of these elements.
Yeah, and I think, thinking about these things is very important because whatever you design, you want it to, resonate with the people that you're trying to target as well as stand out on the shelf. So here is mood board. Now, I do still have to kind of organize this. These are just a few kind of, logo designs and examples. Some even I just got for the colors. Just kind of wanted to place these around here and then start picking out some colors from these. So this is kind of the feel I'm going for, probably a funky kind of organic feel to the font. And then very, again, fun, playful, youthful, not something that feels corporate-y or, really, really modern and digitized. I want it to feel very organic.
Oh, I can definitely get a sense of that from these mood board selections. They're exactly like fitting into that vibe. They're all super playful. And so now I'm like very excited to see how we go from mood board to kind of like our own brand design identity. So this is going to be really interesting. Oh, you pick that one for that specific like I'm going to call it periwinkle, but it might be just like pastel purple.
Yeah, so I tried to pick, reference images that kind of are falling in the color area I want to use. None of these have the exact colors I'm aiming for, but usually when it comes to, just getting rough ideas of the color palette, I'll look at the things I have in the mood board and kind of use it as a starting point. So like obviously I've already changed this. I just kind of used the eyedropper to get this like light purple and then, darkened it because I think that's way too light for what I'm going for, but it definitely helped me get, like in the area of where I'd like to go with this.
Yes, that's really cool. Do you usually select your colors based off of like images, or are you ever composing color palettes like from scratch or from a generator or anything like that?
For the most part, I will literally sit here and play around with things for a really long time. I mean, obviously, I take into consideration like what's going to resonate with my target audience, what's going to be fun, what's going to be playful. I don't want this to be dull because it's a food brand, so it needs to look appetizing at the very least. And I will probably play with these colors for a while, and I'll play with them even more once we actually get some of these design elements in here, because I usually don't actually officially decide on the color palette until I have some of the logos actually designed and laid out and can really see what those look like in context. Because sometimes I'll put together, a simple color palette here and it might look good, and then I put it on the design and I'm like, that's not that's
Not
not
the
what
vibe.
I'm not the
Got
vibe,
it.
no.
Got it. Okay, that's cool to know that you're kind of flexible with those colors up until the very end. When you're designing, are you usually sticking to black and white throughout the design process, or are you integrating these colors and then tweaking as you go?
So next I'm going to start designing the primary logo type, and you'll see me working in red. I will usually, if I'm tracing, I'll use red so I can see what the heck I'm doing. And then if, I'm just typing out the text and messing with elements directly in Illustrator without tracing, I'll use solid black. And I do typically use just one solid color for a while until I'm ready to kind of start experimenting with those colors, because I find that doing that really allows me to see, okay, is this going to work in a solid color? Does it follow like proper logo design rules, if you want to call it that?
Got it. Yeah, that makes total sense. And I definitely agree with you using like the red, because sometimes you can't really see what you're doing unless you have it in that bold color to make it pop out from the artboard. So I'm excited to see that process while you kind of build out this color palette for now. I actually have another question for you. Do you usually present your mood boards to your clients throughout the process, or is that something you hold back?
So this is actually a question that I get all the time, and I find that this really varies depending on the designer, because I know everybody has their own process, and like what works for me may not work for somebody else and vice versa. But essentially, I actually have my clients create their own mood boards. So usually I will have them create a Pinterest board, and I give them a list of things to stick in there. And I tell them, spend a week doing this, like really think about what you're putting in there. I want these things to really resonate with you. And I don't want them to rush, because the mood board is really how I kind of get a rough idea of where their head's at in terms of visuals. And then usually I'll take whatever they have provided and stick it into a file here in my brand identity presentation. And I may add a few things myself, but I'll, essentially simplify what they've given me and only pick out the things that I find super, super important.
That's really interesting. I feel like sometimes when you present mood boards to clients, if it's not clicking with their vision, they can be really turned off, and obviously sometimes you may not know what their vision is until you start working with them, exactly what their vision is. And I was going to ask you like how you talk a client through a mood board, and explain to them what, the objective of the mood board, and how it's not just like, this is what we're going to make you exactly. But I guess if they're making it for you, you kind of save yourself that hassle.
Yeah, I mean, and I know there's a lot of people who will do like their own mood boards and then show them to the client and be like, which direction you want to go in. But I've just found that this way works for me personally, having them create the mood board, because the first client I ever had, I actually really screwed up. I didn't know what they were looking for at all, and I didn't have a process down. I mean, this was years ago. And so this client had just gave me like, I don't know, 3 reference images and like told me what they wanted. And so I had created that, and they were like, well, I hate all of these concepts. And I'm like, oh my God. Like my first client, they hate all the concepts. Holy crap, what am I going to do? And I'm like, can we start from square one? Obviously something's not working here. I'm not understanding. I think you need to give me more reference images. And that's kind of where this idea of having my clients create the mood board for me kind of sprouted from. And that's what I've done ever since then. And obviously, I'm not just looking at the mood board and designing solely based on that, but it really does help me understand what can I create that's going to align with their target audience and also align with what they're looking for visually,
Yeah, their taste, right? Because you can get a better understanding of their eye and taste from their mood board and what they are appreciating.
Exactly.
So that's a really good. I'm so glad that you figured out that that's what works for you. Can you tell us what you're doing here to the sketch? Walk us through it. Is this a sketch that you made on paper? I'm sure everyone in the chat wants to know exactly what's going on here.
Yeah, so this is obviously my very rough sketch. I wrote this in my notebook, and then I just took a photo with my phone, airdropped it to the computer, and then cropped it. So this is kind of like my rough idea for the primary logo. And I actually am going to trace over this type and actually hand create the main type, which I rarely do. So it's going to look sloppy at first, and I'm going to have to do a lot of touching up, but it's going to give the look that I'm really going for. I don't think there's many fonts out there that really had this kind of funky feel to it that I was aiming for. So ultimately, I decided to just do this piece, completely custom. And I did just bring the opacity down a bit on this sketch so that I could really see what I was doing on this layer above it here.
Perfect. I think that's so cool, creating custom text. I feel like you said, sometimes you just don't find the type that you want. So why not make it yourself if you have all the skills here? What tool are you using there?
So I am now using the pen tool, and what I'm going to do is use the pen tool on the S and the Y. And then for the RUP, since they're a little bit more straightforward and standard, I'm going to use the pen tool as well, but I'm going to use it in a different way. And I'm going to actually use the stroke on these to create the entire letters. And I know that sounds confusing. You guys will see exactly what I mean when I start doing it. So
yes, let's see here. And just a reminder for everyone in the chat, if you have questions for Kenzi, drop them in our chat and I'll make sure that she gets to them and we get your questions answered. And if you're dropping questions in the YouTube chat and we're not answering them, please come on over to behance.net/Adobe Live. Then we'll answer all of your questions. So come on over. Oh, you're such a pro with the pen tool. Those curves look amazing. Beautiful. Did it take you a while to figure out the pen tool? Were you always a natural at the pen tool? I feel like it's a controversial tool sometimes.
I mean, I feel like I'm still learning stuff about it sometimes. I'll be doing something and click a little anchor point and then be like, ooh, that looks cool. I didn't even know I could do that. I didn't mean to do that,
Thank you, Illustrator.
Yeah, pretty
for that
much.
new technique and that new little curve. Okay, that's amazing. That's just using the curve dot that pops up when you select it, right? What you just did?
Yeah, so I'm using the direct selection tool and I'm selecting the anchor points. And then I just use this little like curvature mark here to actually curve that. And this probably needs to come out here a bit more in order to curve this.
Perfect. That looks great.
All right, so the S is looking, we're gonna have to do a little touch up here because he's a little skinny right there, but that is okay. That is expected because this font is going to be
because you're doing
funky.
it by hand. And are you using a mouse or are you using a Wacom or what are you using?
Yeah, so I'm actually using a mouse. I have never used anything other than a mouse, which may be why I have really mastered this tool for the most part because I only have a mouse. I do want to get, a tablet or something else to really help me with illustrations and doing things like this because I think that would make it so much easier instead of, having to click with this mouse.
It does open a whole other world of options, I think. But at the same time, if you're such a pro at the pen tool and the mouse, why alter a process that's clearly working for you?
Yeah, and I mean, I think I'm thinking about trying out, an iPad or something soon, but who knows? I may not even like it. And
Who knows?
I want to make a point here to say that I've came out so far with this line here because I'm actually, once I get done modifying this S, I'm going to use the object path offset tool to actually bring this S out and make it larger to cut through here to make sure this little space is completely even. And again, if that doesn't make sense, you will see exactly what I mean when I get to that part.
Yes, if something isn't making sense to you, let's just trust Kenzi here. Watch this all happen. I'm sure that everything will come together. We just can't even begin to understand exactly how she's doing it until you see it kind of all happen live.
All right.
Yes.
So
tell us exactly why. Yeah, like that shape for the Y looks like it's totally like out of bounds in my mind. But what's your technique there?
So, crap, I needed to delete this one first. It's not. All right. I'm using the shape builder tool. So essentially what I did was copy this one and flip it to make sure they're like exactly the same up here. And then I'm going to use the shape builder tool to actually connect these. and kind of smooth it out after I do that. So
Okay.
let's see if that's fixed. Yes. Okay. So cut that off and then bring all these together. Now we have a
Nice.
fabulous, well, it's
A
not
fabulous
that fabulous
Y.
yet, but it's going to be fabulous soon.
Perfect. I think it's really smart that you kind of took that first shape and just mirrored it. That way they were symmetrical.
And I feel like that's kind of like the hardest thing to work with when you're doing custom type like this, is making sure everything's even. Because I'm definitely not a calligrapher or anything like that. Like that's not my area of expertise. But since this one is so funky and so crazy, I knew that I could get away with doing, freehanding it like this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's still like fun and you're still playing with it. And, you can always tweak it as you go. I think, the letter forms. So there's some flexibility there until your eye kind of catches up.
So,
ooh, that's so neat. Walk us through that for the next letter.
So for these, I'm essentially just relying on the line here and the stroke width. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually expand these after I have them exactly the way I want. And then it'll essentially become kind of a shape like this. And I chose to do it this way because, since they're so kind of like standard, I knew that if I tried doing this, they would probably be all out of whack and not evenly the same width. So if I do it this way, I know for a fact it's going to be the same width.
Consistent all the way through.
Yes. And I'm going to
That's a really cool little tip there if you're ever looking to create a simple kind of letter form. Okay.
Again,
working smarter, not harder.
Yeah, the direct selection tool is my BFF.
And that looks like a great U. You have the base for a great U there.
Yeah, I might have to adjust how wide it is after I cut it. I'm not quite sure, but we will see. We will see. All right, now I need the scissors tool on in here and cut these off.
Cool. Get rid of that extra piece. Boom. Beautiful U. That looks good.
He looks a little big, so I'm gonna bring him in just a little here.
Perfect. And are you going to use that same technique for the P?
Yep.
Cool. It's so handy to see how that stroke is just like helping you out.
Oh yeah. These letters would not look okay if I did it the other way, for sure.
I'm sure you could get it there, but why go through the trouble if you have this method? Okay. Now we have a question here from Ruth asking, do you help your clients build up their brand identity first? I'm assuming before getting into the logo creation process.
I'm not entirely sure if I understand the full question.
Maybe the brand strategy before getting into the actual kind of creation of the logo and picking colors and all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah. So most of my clients, what I think I find most easiest about a lot of the clients I work with is that most of them have already been in business for a while. So a lot of times when they come to me, they already have a rough idea of their target market. Like they already know who they're trying to target most of the time. Sometimes, I'll go in there, do some research and say, okay, here's also a sub market that you can target. And here's some things that can, help you resonate with these people more than you already are. So a lot of times, they'll come in and I do have a set of questions for all of my clients to answer. Obviously, this is a fictional brand, so we're not seeing that portion, but I do ask my clients, like, who is your ideal client or customer? If you already know who they are, describe them. If you had to describe your business in 3 adjectives, what are those 3 adjectives? What makes your business different? So I can really get a sense of what they think and like how they think they're positioning themselves, and then maybe, look at how they actually are positioning themselves and what we can do differently to, improve their brand based on where they're already at in their current target market.
Amazing. Yes, all that kind of like behind the scenes work that goes into the brand before actually even getting to creating logos, creating a full brand identity, creating a color palette, and doing all of their branding is essential. And it's really cool to get a better understanding of your process and how you're working with your clients in that way. Now, remember, guys, if you have any other questions for Kenzi, drop them in the chat. And in the meantime, we're going to keep watching her creating these amazing letter forms in Illustrator using the stroke to help her out. I love seeing this. So I see you're like fighting with this P. Tell me exactly what you're kind of trying to create on that curve.
So I got it now, but essentially when I had done it the first time, I didn't connect this here to this path to this anchor point. And that was obviously a problem. So I went back and now I have connected it successfully.
We got that P in line now. Perfect. Oh, yes, I see it all happening. So what's next here now that we have those letters set?
So now I'm going to go and touch up the S, and then I'm going to kind of cut off the Y here, and then probably have to modify that a little bit as well to fix whatever it screws up when I do that, because it'll probably cut off the top piece here. If I do it the way I'm thinking, I could probably fix that. Anyways, working on the S, the edge here. So a lot of times what I like to do is after I get it to, a good solid point, if see how this curve right here is like not that even? I'll take the smooth tool and kind of use it to help me, get this to a better point, and then go back to the pen tool and kind of use that again.
Modifying. So you're just going back and forth between the pen tool, the selection tool, and that smooth tool to kind of get those anchor points all in the right place.
Yeah, and one thing that I really try to do most of the time is actually eliminate as many anchor points as possible to ensure that like everything is super smooth.
Yeah, keeping it simple. I know sometimes when you're freehanding something, you might add more anchor points either on accident or on purpose to make sure to get it to kind of perform the way you want. And then once you have it there, you can kind of simplify.
So that's an anchor point. That's an anchor point.
That always happens to me too. I'm like, is that an anchor point or is that the handle or what am I looking at? Definitely can be tricky, but you get used to it. Now that S looks pretty even there.
Looks like something's going on here. Oh gosh, what did I do? Okay.
Just zoom in. Let us see exactly what's going on.
Sometimes I hit Command X and it deletes, and I don't mean to hit that.
So it happens to the best of us.
There we go. I just had to, the handle of that anchor point was like out, and it needed to be totally on this little dot here. Yeah, not out.
Perfect. That now like the base of the S looks pretty even throughout the entire S, aside from the flare kind of towards the ends. What's next here?
Okay. And I think I'm probably gonna smooth up this little piece as well. I don't know. It's okay. All right, and I think that I'm going to leave, these flares here as well as on the Y, because I feel like that kind of gives it a little quirkiness to it, a little something unique. Whereas if I took that away, I feel like it would just be bland.
Yeah, then it's looking like maybe you could use a font if you didn't have like that personality on the ends.
All right, so this is what I was talking about with the object path offset and kind of why I did the Y like that. So I have the S selected. I'm going to path, offset path. And now as you can see, this is kind of cutting in there. I think it needs to be a little bit bigger so it can reach that Y.
Okay.
And if I do this, it's going to cut off the top of the Y here. So I think that I'm actually going to cut this before I do it.
So you're going to cut off that new shape that you made so it doesn't intersect with the top of the Y.
Yes, I'm cutting off the top of this big fat S here. And then I left the bottom piece. So now I'm going to use the shape builder and take it away right there.
Cool. And that was just to clean up the Y so that it matches the path of the S, right?
Yes. And now that little anchor point has kind of messed with that.
Sweet. Let me see what we have going on here in the chat. Perfect. Everyone is loving seeing the smoothing tool and that stroke tool tip to build the RU and P as well. People were very excited about that. So I'm excited to see where this goes now that you're perfecting the flare of the Y. All right. That looks pretty good.
Yeah, I think that's pretty aligned.
What are you thinking? What are you looking at when you're trying to see if this custom font looks good? Like what is your eye looking for?
So basically, I'm probably just like I'm over analyzing the end of the Y right here because I don't like how big it is right now. Like I actually am bothered by how big this is right now. So I'm like, okay, should I make this a little smaller? What should I do here?
It like just the end looked a little too chunky, right?
Yeah.
Compared, especially I can see what you're saying compared to the chunkiness of the S's flare, I guess, if we're calling that part a little tail a flare. So I could see what you mean by trying to make sure that it stays balanced. I think that's an improvement for sure.
But now I feel like it's going too much to the left.
It's going too much to the left. This is the reality when you're kind of creating a custom font, a custom type treatment. You're definitely kind of trying to find the balance between all of the letters and the overall composition, right?
Okay, so I'm gonna let's see. I'm gonna redo the Y here because that just didn't really work the way I was hoping it would work. That time.
So you move that S in, hoping that maybe that means the Y will get a little slimmer, right?
Yeah, I moved them closer together.
So repeating that same process, slicing that S, and now cutting that Y?
Yes.
All right. It left you a little extra anchor point there as a treat.
Yes, it did.
But you can always fix that. There you go. Almost. You got to play with it, you guys. You got to play with your shapes until they are sitting just right.
Get rid of that little line there.
Perfect. Now, while you're working on that, I wanted to ask you, how did you get started as a freelance, as an independent designer, as a freelance designer, having your own design business? I know you said you did that while you were in school, but how did you get started doing that?
Yeah, so obviously like my first year, I was starting to learn design, and I don't even know how the idea of freelancing came about. I may have like seen a YouTube video or something and was just kind of like, wow, I could like, make money on the side or something. And I remember for my birthday, my dad had like bought me Kenzi Green Design, the custom domain. And I started out with my website on WordPress, and it looked like crap because I didn't know how to build websites at the time. Anyways, so I was on that, and I was like, I'm going to just use my skills, what I already know, to kind of start marketing myself.
Yes.
And so I had gotten
Hold on 1 second. Why did you expand those instead of leaving those as strokes?
Yeah,
pausing from the story for 1 second, you guys. I want to make sure you guys capture that.
Yeah, so I expanded these so that I can essentially edit them just like shapes, because if I leave them as strokes, I'm going to run into issues when I start moving them around and trying to scale them and change the colors, because these would essentially be strokes and these would be shapes.
Got it. Okay, so to keep the entire the type consistent and make sure that you can use the whole thing together in unison, you did that. Perfect. That's just because I know everyone really enjoyed seeing you build that with the stroke tool. I wanted to make sure they didn't miss out on that final step to make it into a shape. Sweet. Okay, so what's next here for this process, Kenzi?
Well, I'm still over analyzing the Y, so there's that.
Okay, so we're there with the Y. We can keep tweaking the Y. As long as but I feel like we could tweak the Y forever. Usually when you're working on this, how long does this stage take if you're kind of creating a custom type from scratch? How long do you spend on it typically?
I mean, it could take me over an hour. Okay, I'm gonna try to redo this Y one more time, and if it's not
Let's
perfect,
take it back, guys. The S, the R, the U, the P are all good. This Y is giving us trouble. It happens. This is what happens when you're streaming live.
So basically right here, I can tell that this is not totally even. So instead of cutting off the S, I'm just not going to cut off the S this time and just have it go whoop.
Got it. Okay. So are you going to redo that anchor point?
I am going to leave it just like this because I think that this is
use
going
the offset
to
path. Okay.
This is totally here. Actually, I'm going to copy this so that if I need the old top of the Y back, I have it. Okay. So now, if I put that, Command F. Okay. So there's the top of the Y back. Now I'm going to cut this off because we don't need any of this. Okay.
So, all right. I'm following you. Now we can keep on watching while she perfects this Y finally. What do you think? Oh, I thought you had reached the final form. My bad.
What is the chat saying right now? My issue is this piece right here. I don't like that it's not curved.
I think that you should cut it so that it follows the curve of the S and then flip it so that the other Y arm matches it. No?
This one?
Right? Because right now you have like they're not twins. They're like fraternal twins.
Okay, hold on.
So maybe that? Or would that look too like
I feel like that would be
Yankees symbol or something?
I feel like okay, earlier, look, I was practicing this Y right here, and I feel like I don't know what I need to do, but maybe if I bring this up a bit so that I bring the S down so that it's not as close to that top of the Y.
Right.
I can do this without it completely.
It can be like the previous version.
Okay, we're gonna have to go back a few steps because I lost the Y. All right.
Okay.
Here we are. I'm gonna bring this S down a bit, and then
just that Y needs to go in a tiny bit. Right? We'll see while you keep on playing with that. If anyone in the chat has strong feelings about this process, let us know. Maybe we'll try it out. And maybe you'll help us create the perfect Y that we're chasing after. There you go. See, it's just like that little bit that needs to shave off.
And then let's delete that.
Yeah.
Not that. And then I could kind of smooth that out right there. Okay, this is looking much better.
Mm-hmm. Smooth tool. So handy.
Okay, I think, that's probably good enough. I can probably tweak this, like you said, forever, but that's definitely way better than it was
earlier. Right. I totally agree. And then for this part, you're just going to use a font, right?
Yes, I'm going to use an actual font. I'm actually going to use Kayla Bold, which I believe this font is in Canva. I don't know. I think it might be in there by default. I know this is a popular font, so some people may know this font.
Got it. And where do you usually go when you're looking for new fonts?
Typically, if I'm not using Adobe fonts, I will get them from Creative Market. I find Creative Market is really useful for like crazy fonts, like especially like with glyphs and stuff, like the little swirly tails and all of that. That's typically where I will find my favorite fonts, actually.
Perfect. Yeah, I feel like everyone's always trying to figure out where they can get cool new fonts. So now you know where to look. Creative Market, and as always, Adobe Typekit has plenty of fonts. If you're looking to stay kind of within your free subscription, it's a subscription, but they're built in, so you can find some fonts in there. Now, what are you using these guides for throughout the process? What are you looking for? What is your eye kind of looking for?
Yeah, so essentially I'm using the guides down here to make sure all of these are at the same line, at the same level here. And I don't mind that the Y extends over it because it's a little funky, unlike
Yeah,
these. And then I am also using it to ensure that this is completely aligned to the edge of the P over here so that everything is like, balanced and like lined up.
perfect. Yes. Those guides are very handy to make sure that everything kind of stays tight and within its own little grid.
All right, now the fun part, drawing.
And what tool are you using there?
The pencil tool. So this
Sweet.
is like these things here, they're just kind of like such organic shapes. I can just pretty much like freehand it and kind
Mhm.
of, modify from there.
As opposed to using something like the pen tool, it's a little bit more precise.
Yeah, and I think I'd actually get frustrated using the the pen tool on these just because the little curves are so
They're
in
just like in and out and smooth.
yeah,
And sometimes a pen tool, you have to add all those anchors in order to make that happen. With the pencil
exactly.
tool, you can just draw them in.
And
Those
I
look
do feel
great.
like this would actually be way easier if I had like a tablet or something, but
It
don't.
could be, it could be. I could see a world where that may be helpful, but if it's only for these elements, it makes sense that you stay using the mouse. Stick to what you know sometimes. Okay. That looks great. Those look very organic. They look like they're just splashing around.
Yeah, and again, I feel like these little elements, first off, they help fill a lot of the space around this type here that's so, it comes out so far.
Yeah.
But I also feel like it adds that like playful, youthful feel to the brand.
100%. That's a really fun way to kind of fill that space while sticking to like the story that you're creating, right? Like for the brand. Cute. And I imagine it makes for like cool elements down the line that you can use on some patterns or anything like that.
Yeah, and that's actually something that I do plan to get to. Typically, this is kind of how I start, the design process every time. I always start with like the primary logo, and then I start playing with, the elements from that, and then making more supporting elements because, again, like you said, you can use these in all sorts of different ways. So it really helps to kind of like start here and then progress from there.
Yes, and kind of start merging everything together, creating different collateral. It all stems from right here. So, what are we working on now?
All right, so now that we have this, I can actually start just kind of roughly playing with different color ideas
Cool.
as a
Yeah, I know
start.
that you generated that palette over there prior to it. Ooh, it's very playful, has like a beach vibe a little bit.
Now let's see, what should that one be? Should I incorporate here? Okay, let's try.
It's interesting trying to get like the right rhythm within the colors.
Yeah, especially when you're doing like multicolors in a main logo. I actually think I'm going to kind of go with a lighter purple for that, and then maybe this could be like the darker purple. Needs a little bit
Right.
more contrast though.
Amazing. So while you're working on those colors, we have a question here from Wendelin Barrios. So Wendelin is asking, how many versions of the logo do you usually draw up before feeling like you have enough options? Yeah.
It varies. I mean, this sometimes when I sit down to create something, and I do think it's always easier when you're creating a fictional brand because you don't have to really worry as much about the client's thoughts and what they want and things like that. So with this one, I kind of already had the vision in my head. So when I went to sketch it out, it really only took me like a few tries before I had it to where I was like, okay, I feel like this is something I can work with. Whereas other times, if I'm having trouble getting ideas or I'm not totally sure and I don't have that like vision in my head, it can take me quite a few different sketches, or sometimes I'll start sketching and be like, this isn't working and I'll have to step away and then come back to it. I think that it really all depends on the brand at hand and the way you're feeling about it, or if you have ideas or you don't have ideas.
Totally, totally. Definitely when you involve a client, things just take longer as opposed to when you're working on a passion project or a fictional brand where you can just call all the shots, right? Because you have another element of feedback. Do you usually how how many logos do you usually present to a client? Do you give them one option? Do you give them 10 options? I'm just curious because I know a lot of designers approach this differently.
So I only offer brand identity design. I don't ever offer one-off logo design, and I use the one concept method. So basically, if this were, an actual client project, all they would ever see is the primary logo. We will have the secondary logo, we'll have some brand marks, and I present the entire brand identity at one time. They don't get different options. When I had first started, I did create different logo concepts, as I think a lot of designers do that, especially when you start freelancing. But I found that the one concept method really allows me to showcase the strongest concept to my client. Because before, when I had did multiple concepts, they would always end up trying to mesh them together, or they would become indecisive. And at the end of the day, even if I presented multiple concepts, there was usually always like that one concept that I was like, this is the best concept, like this is the one that works. Although I still had to present those other concepts, it would usually end up being like a Frankenstein end result where they just meshed everything together. So I prefer to use this method now. And I really think that, as the expert in the scenario, I don't think the client should always be making those design decisions. I think that, I kind of should take the lead and say, hey, this is the design I think is going to work best for you and your target market, and here's why. And that's kind of how I approach things.
Amazing. I love that. I feel like I totally understand where you're coming from. We always present like more than one because we want to give options, but then at the same time, it can backfire when the client just wants too much.
Exactly.
Like when they want to Frankenstein things and you're like, well, it doesn't make sense anymore. But it's tough when you're working with clients. How do you kind of get to that one concept, to that single concept point? Are you asking them a lot of questions beforehand, like you mentioned, or is there another step in between, kind of like mood boarding and then that final single concept?
Yeah. So again, I do ask them lots of questions, and I've actually recently started also asking the question, is there anything that you want to see in this brand identity, like any symbols or elements that you would potentially like to see? And is there anything that you don't want to see? Because
Got it.
recently I had a couple clients where I had designed something and I thought it was fabulous. I loved it. It really made sense for the brand. But then I presented it to the client and they're like, well, I just don't like, this thing or this type of flower. And I was like, well, darn, I wish I would have known that before I had spent time, further developing this concept with this flower. So that's why I've kind of started implementing those questions as well. So that does go into, my thought process when it comes to creating the concepts.
Got it. So kind of before they even get to see that first logo option, you're kind of trying to figure out all the ins and outs of what they like, what they don't like, what they want to see, their vision, to kind of ensure that that one concept you present to them is the strongest, right?
Yeah.
Amazing.
And sometimes, again, I can have an idea and I'll be like, okay, this is what I want to do. I'll do it and it looks great. And other times I'll have an idea, I'll do it, and I'm like, this does not look good. I need to keep exploring ideas. It really varies.
Totally. I understand what you mean. Yeah, there's a lot of like push and pull throughout the process while you're like trying to come up with that single great concept. Do you feel like that adds more pressure, just knowing that you can only present one, that you're only going to present one option?
I mean, I think that it's scary presenting a brand to a client no matter what. Like,
Okay.
like
Regardless of how many you present.
like anytime I send over a concept, I get so nervous. But I will say, with multiple concepts, you're never usually going to have a client who responds saying, okay, this is the one, you don't need to change anything. Whereas with the one concept method, presenting an entire brand identity where the client can see everything being used in context and how it all works together, that's where I see the most success in terms of I've sent, brand identities over to clients and they've responded with, you don't need to change anything, it's perfect. Whereas, before when I was doing that multiple concept method, that had never happened.
Right. Because with the multiple concept method, you're not showing them every single element. That's like the key difference, you think?
That's kind
of making them more decisive.
I also just feel like the one concept method allows you to showcase more of your strategy and your thought process as well, because I can show them the mockups, and I can show them, here's all your brand marks, here's the brand patterns, here's how these things work together. Whereas if you're just presenting multiple logo concepts, you don't really have as much to work with, and you can't really explain your thought process as well because you're lacking a lot of the context.
Right. A lot of those other elements. I totally see what you're saying. Let us know in the chat if you're planning on using the one concept method or if you already use the one concept method. I'm curious to see where you guys in the chat kind of stand with that. And I think it makes sense, especially when you're working with clients who are indecisive and they're not designers, right? Because they hired you. To sell them on one concept seems like it's going to be a lot easier than kind of getting them to pick your favorite concept out of the three that you presented, right?
Yeah.
So where are we at here with the colors?
So I feel like I'm on a good route right now. Right now I'm just kind of like, where do I want to place everything? Where do I want, the yellow? Where do I want the orange? And I do kind of like this cream color here, but I almost want it slightly lighter, almost white, but not totally.
Yes. Okay. Oh, I like that. I can definitely tell a difference, and it kind of makes everything feel a little bit more cohesive instead of like that stark white.
So over here, we have some elements that I had quickly sketched up, some rough ideas. And I am probably going to go ahead and start sketching over those and bringing them to life so I can utilize them in, the brand marks and potentially the secondary logo.
Perfect. I'm excited to see these illustrations come to life. What tool are you going to use?
So I'm probably going to use lots of shapes. Definitely the rectangle, the circle, the pen tool again. And we'll see.
I think illustrating with shapes makes the most sense, just to kind of keep things even too, right? As opposed to freehanding a rectangle.
Oh yeah.
No point in doing that.
And I mean, if you want your brand to be like really, really organic, it might make sense. And right. I probably could freehand some of these because the logo has that free-handed, playful type in it, but I'm not going to do that.
We'll see what I feel like. Let's go with your original plan. Unless you don't end up liking what it looks like, then you can switch. We have an amazing question here from Eva Parr. When you're choosing brand colors, do you keep CMYK or Pantone colors in mind for printing?
So typically when I am choosing colors, I always have it in RGB mode. And I mean, I always explain if I'm working with a client who is doing printing and things like that, like these things are going to look different, blah, blah, blah. Like, I feel like that's something that at this point in time, everyone should at least be aware of. And a lot of my clients don't actually even need the Pantone colors because many of them actually are solely digital or solely online, and maybe they only order business cards or things like that. I think the only clients I've had who really actually needed those were maybe a client where they were like printing custom shirts and things like that. So it's really rare that my clients actually need that information.
Nice. So I hope that answers your question, Eva. She also has a second part to this question. Do you ever run into issues with colors not printing well for products?
I haven't yet. And I mean, if I do have a client who is going to be printing a lot, I will, look more into, okay, what are these going to look like when they could be printed? Like, what does this potentially look like? Whereas if I have a client who I know isn't really going to be doing a lot of printing, I don't really worry about it as much.
So just a case by case.
Yeah, totally.
Cool. And then we have a question here from Ruth. In what format do you present your logos, in CMYK or RGB?
Everything I do is RGB, like all the time.
There you go, Ruth. I hope that answers your question. I feel like everyone always wants to know those little details so they can compare it to their own process and see how they're doing. This little whisk is turning out very cute.
Yeah, it's kind of, strange how I'm creating this, but I mean, it's working. Like
it is. I feel like there's always a million ways to get anything done in Illustrator. So it's always fun to see how someone kind of creates their little illustrations and shapes. Everyone has a different method.
Okay, if there was a whisk, would it be thicker at the top or thicker at the bottom? Like,
Thicker.
would it
My whisk is even.
Okay, maybe I shouldn't do that then.
I feel like maybe the whisk is the actual how you have it drawn with like the more domed end with the weight of the dome kind of towards the top. I hope you're getting what I mean.
Do I need this to be wider?
Yeah, like wider at the top as opposed to like even. You have it drawn perfectly.
I know. And now it's not digitizing the same.
Maybe it's just like moving those points up. So it's like curved more circular at the top.
Oh, like moving these outward?
Yeah, like out and up.
Let's delete that.
Out and upward. Because it's almost like a circle at the top of the whisk and then it narrows in towards the handle.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
You have it drawn. You know what a whisk looks like. There you go. Yes.
Bring that up a little.
Like, I trust you know what a whisk looks like. But we all doubt ourselves once we're in there trying to make it. It's like when you look at a word for too long and you don't know if it's a word anymore.
I definitely don't cook that often. I mean, I cook some things, but I'm definitely not like a baker of sorts. We have like one whisk that barely gets used.
I feel you. I avoid using my whisk because I hate cleaning it.
Okay, that looks so much better. There we go.
There you go. Perfect.
All right,
nice.
We have a whisk.
Beautiful whisk.
Sketch 1. Illustration 1, done.
Done, check.
I think that was probably the hardest one to work with, honestly.
The whisk. Yeah, the other ones are a little bit more straightforward.
Okay, I feel like this is that was the hardest. This is the second hardest because of this handle here, but I don't think that'll be too much of a problem.
I feel like once you look at a drawing for too long, you start doubting it. You're like, was this the right way? Is this what a frying pan looks like? But I believe in you, Kenzi. I believe in you.
All right, let's bring this in so it has that little yes. All right, and then let's round this. Amazing. This one was so much easier than the whisk.
Okay, so yes, whisk cleaning, guys. I hate it. I avoid it at all costs. Now, that is a gorgeous skillet. Is that what it's called? Frying pan?
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be a skillet. What does it look like?
It looks like a skillet, yeah. I was doubting my English, but yeah.
Okay.
Perfect. Now, a little bit ago, before we got into the weeds with the illustration, we were talking about how you started your design business with your dad buying you the domain and getting started in college. Can you kind of tell us how you ended up landing your first client? We have here Make Garrison wondering how you get your clients. So I feel like that's a good place to start. How did you get your first client once you decided to get into like the design, be an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so I mean, first off, getting clients also comes down to like having a credible website and like a portfolio. So as I had stated earlier, I started out in WordPress and I was like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. So I moved to Squarespace and I redesigned my portfolio so that it looked much better. And I actually got my first client from a Facebook group. So it was like a local Facebook group and somebody was just looking for a logo for their local business. And I happened to be in the group and we, connected, and that was my first ever client project. And I actually got, I would say, the next like 4 clients or so from Facebook groups. Now, I will say I was also charging incredibly low rates at this time because I was brand new and all that. So that probably played a factor. But nowadays, most of my clients actually come from TikTok and then Instagram. And I still will sometimes have clients from Facebook groups, but it's more likely that they find me through TikTok.
Amazing. That's so cool that you're finding your clients from TikTok. Have you found, I know you said you get most of your clients from there. Is that your favorite platform then? Or which platform is your favorite?
Yeah, I think TikTok is probably my favorite platform because really, really allows me to showcase my personality in a way that I feel like maybe I can't do as much on Instagram. And I am also about the aesthetics. Like I like the aesthetic side of Instagram. So when I'm creating content on there, I'm like, okay, now I have to make a reel cover and it's got to match my feed. And I feel like there's a lot more work that goes into creating content for Instagram with less reward. Whereas I can create a TikTok in like, I don't know, a minute and it go viral and have like 3 new inquiries in my inbox.
Amazing. That's so powerful, you guys. I definitely agree with you that Instagram lends itself to aesthetics so much that you can sometimes get stuck there, like being a perfectionist and kind of making sure everything looks on brand for your brand, even if that might not be the important part, right? Because sometimes the message is more important. Do you recommend TikTok for designers?
Absolutely. Every designer that reaches out to me, they're like, how do I get clients? How do I get clients? I'm like, you need to be on TikTok. Like it's a great and a lot of people find that surprising, but it really is an awesome platform for gaining clients.
I totally believe that. I feel like TikTok is a really powerful tool for connection and for getting to know someone. So that makes sense because if they trust you, they believe in your work, it's going to be a no-brainer for them to want to come to you for design work. So I know that everyone in the chat is now going to go check out Kenzi's TikTok if you don't already follow her, and create an account of your own and start sharing your work so you can be like Kenzi and get your clients from there. I love this little pancake stack. It is adorable.
Yeah, what I'm actually going to do is keep a copy of it and expand it, because usually when I use the shape builder tool, it's always ideal to have these things expanded, because if I don't, they start trying to form into their own like paths and stuff in places where I didn't intend. Okay. That's why. Yeah. Okay.
That makes sense. You know, you're working with the tool here, working to its strengths. 3 pancakes. I love it. I love pancakes.
Do we want 3 or do we want 2? I don't know.
I think I prefer 3. I think multiples of 3 creates more harmony in my mind. That's just me. Okay, let's see. I love these little icons. They're going to play beautifully with this syrup brand. I'm excited to see it all come together. Which one are we drawing next?
So I haven't decided if I actually want to draw this one or not. I think maybe for the sake of time, we're just going to hold off on that. And then if I end up wanting to come back to it and like use it later, I'll come back to it.
Okay.
That one would definitely be an absolute challenge.
We also have a question here from Vikram. Do you charge your clients more if they are not into your one concept at all and you have to start from zero?
So that's actually, okay, that's a really good question, but basically I do offer 3 rounds of refinement. So like obviously when I send over the brand identity presentation, I'm not expecting every client to be like, oh, this is amazing, you don't need to change anything. Like I am expecting some refinements, because it is quite rare that you're going to get everything absolutely perfect on the first try. So, you know, I do have room for those refinements, and I've worked with hundreds of businesses using this method, and I've only had someone reject the entire concept one time, and they actually took the blame for it. And I know that sounds crazy, but they were at a point in business where they really didn't know what they wanted to do with their brand. They didn't actually have a good understanding of what they wanted to offer. And that, of course, affected me as the designer, trying to understand what I need to create for them that's going to work for them. So that client and I ended up having another meeting, and she was like, this is my fault. I think we just need to take like a month off so I can think about things and come back. And for the most part, I try to be really lenient and understanding with my clients. So I was like, yeah, that'll be fine. When you reach out to me, we may need to work on availability, because I don't know what's coming down the pipeline in terms of other clients and projects. But if you need some time to think about it so we can get back at this and do it correctly, that's totally fine. And the second time around, I absolutely nailed it, and it was a very successful project. So
oh my gosh, there you go, Vikram. I hope that answers your question. I feel like that makes so much sense, Kenzi. If the client doesn't have a clear vision, how are you supposed to then come up with a clear vision for them based on their like first concept. So that makes a lot of sense. And Vikram, make sure you just get out there and start work hand in hand with your clients so that you can avoid those kinds of situations to begin with. But if you're asking the right questions, you should be able to kind of nail it, just like Kenzi said. Okay, so where are we at here? What is the next step in this process?
So now I'm kind of trying to explore secondary logos. So usually I try to make the secondary logo a little bit of a more simplified, condensed version of the primary. Obviously, this is going to be a little bit challenging because I'm working with custom type here, but after I get this down, I will then move on to the brand marks. So like, smaller variations of the primary and secondary logo that maybe don't necessarily say the brand name, or they have like the icons incorporated into them. Brand marks are usually my favorite part. Secondary logo sometimes frustrates me because it can be hard sometimes to come up with a secondary logo that really works. So we will see. That's what I'm exploring right now.
Yeah, you definitely just have to like play with it until you kind of land on a version that makes sense. But I believe in you, Kenzi. I feel like you're already onto something that's going to work great. And what do you think is the value of the secondary logo for a brand?
So like, obviously this is huge. Like this is a really big logo. So the secondary logo, again, I try to make it smaller and more simplified so that it can maybe be used in places in which this is just like way too big.
Yes. Like for a what's it called? A website banner or a menu or a social icon. Maybe the secondary logo might be more appropriate. I totally get it, and I'm down to see what are you creating there? Tell me about this.
I'm like, what if I do like just like a little shape in the background behind it instead of adding more elements to it?
Yeah, like another syrup spill, but a different one.
This color is probably not gonna work because it's so light.
You never know until you start playing with it.
Exactly.
And what do you always offer your clients logos in black and white, or only in their colors, or how many exports are you doing of their logo?
So many. So many. So I'll give my clients their logo in the color that, like obviously they would have this, and then maybe they would have a few other variations with the colors mixed up a bit. And then they would also have a solid black, a solid white. And that's why, again, I usually create in a solid color, because I want to make sure whatever I am creating can work as like just solid white or solid black. I don't think this is working because I don't know what
distracting,
color. Like I can't use this color because I feel like, I could use that color, but it would have to be used on like a dark background to actually see it.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Right. What if that's tough. What if you did the spill in like the lilac and then the syrup in the darker purple?
Let's try it.
It's nothing groundbreaking, but it might work.
I could actually try exploring an even lighter purple thrown in there.
It's all about playing with it and seeing. I'm kind of into that.
Yeah, me too.
Maybe the shape just needs a little, yes, there we go, so it doesn't compete. Perfect.
Okay, what do we think about the shape?
I kind of think that perhaps where the S and the shape meet, there's a little bit of resistance right there. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's what I was looking at.
Do we want it to conflict?
Do we want it to go behind the S?
Maybe behind it, but not like competing with that. Yeah, something like that. I think that feels a little bit more peaceful to my eyes.
And you're an illustrator, so like harmony. This is probably like right in your area.
Sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't, But I'm into that. And you filled in that negative space of the S that you previously filled in with that splash with this little spill. I'm calling it a spill, guys. I hope everyone knows what I'm talking about.
Okay, I don't like this part. I feel like it needs to be a little less spilly there.
We're just playing with that pencil tool, getting the perfect organic shape that seems like it happened in one stroke, but it really happened in like 20. Okay. So while you continue working, I'm going to give everyone a little reminder. If you're tuning into this stream right now, you're watching Kenzi create a brand identity for this syrup brand using Adobe Illustrator. And if you're tuning in from YouTube, come on over to Behance, behance.net/Adobe Live. On Behance, we can answer your questions. You can join the chat. We have an amazing, welcoming community here. So jump on over to Behance and talk to us. Now, Kenzi, what's next here? I see you've made some moves since we last chatted.
So I actually ended up bringing this purple that's here slightly darker. And then I'm going to stick with like this lighter color here because I think that works quite well.
Yeah. I think it looks good.
Send that to the back. I actually think I like that one way better on the white.
Mm-hmm.
And something that I could foresee this, having is like different color variations, or even just like this being that color here. And then
yeah, you have options here to switch those colors around.
This one being this color.
That could work for on a darker background.
Yeah, sure. Like have those little, usually with the secondary logo, I try to like present a few different color combos.
Mm-hmm.
So what do we need for this one? We need this purple, and then this one could be this purple.
Switching it around.
Cool. Maybe I can, let's see, this one would need to be on, a dark or light background?
I think dark.
Yes, probably.
It's tough. It's a hard thing here, what we're doing, trying to find different ways to make that secondary logo be legible, but also still using all the different colors that you have for the color palette so that it's not redundant. It's interesting. It's like a little color math that you're doing here.
Yeah, this is actually like a very hard one to like find a background for, because none of these colors are all so intense.
Right.
Yeah.
You'd have to try maybe like a muted one, or like a shade or a tint of one of the other ones maybe.
Try.
Or remove the spill as like a tertiary logo.
I could keep this.
Mm-hmm. And then if Juliana's was light, that would totally work against that one.
I actually could try white as well. I didn't even think about that. But I feel like I would want this to be white and this to be that, since it's not as important as the big text.
Yeah, you have some options here.
Okay, how do I want to set this up?
So many different ways to go about it. What are you creating here?
So now I'm trying to figure out where the center is, because usually I try to like arrange them in like a way that looks at least like somewhat cute. So I'm thinking, okay, here I can bring this here. And then maybe this one could be that color. And then this one could be white. And I actually would prefer this to be, well, first let me center it in here. So like I feel like when it comes to the one concept method, one of the most important things is having like a presentation that looks really nice, because that's really like what helps sell the idea of the one concept method.
I totally agree with that. Do you present it to the client like in a video call, or do you usually just send over a PDF or a link? What's your process for presentation?
Oh yeah, I always do a video. So usually I will pre-record a video and talk through like my thought process, my strategy, what I found in the research. So like here I'd obviously be like, here's what other brands are doing. Here's why you're going to use these like really unique colors that you aren't seeing a lot. And I basically make them watch the video first. Like I will give them links and I'll be like, click here to watch, the video and I say, watch this first before you go look through the PDF, because I think it's so important for them to understand my thought process. And if they're just going straight into looking at the PDF, they may not read everything that's in there, or they may not even, really understand my full thought process. Where did my line go? Okay, it's gone. Typically I like to kind of like separate these areas with a little line here just to kind of provide some contrast.
Gotcha. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I feel like the walkthrough is essential. That way they really get an understanding of your thought process and exactly how much thought went into the development of the brand identity, and that nothing is random, nothing is arbitrary, everything is thought out. And if they don't watch the walkthrough, it's like they're gonna interpret the presentation without any context, or maybe even skip some really important information and have doubts. So I totally agree with you there. Kind of having that video walkthrough is essential to make sure that they're fully understanding all the work that's gone into it.
Exactly. And I'm actually going to copy these and keep them over here so that if I end up screwing them up, I can go back to them over
Makes
there.
Makes sense. Yes, we always keep a version that's untouched so you can go back to it. Okay, so we have our primary logo made. And now our secondary logo.
We have some new colors in here as well. So I think I'm really gonna, so we aren't even using pink anywhere. So I'm gonna switch this out with, we have this new purple here. Okay, and then we're using all the rest here. So
do you ever create like secondary color palettes or anything like that?
Typically I'll give my clients like a max of 6 colors, and that's kind of that. And I'm actually using more than that here.
Because all of your colors are very like intense, like you said. So
yeah,
sometimes you need that like secondary tint to just make sure things are still legible.
Yeah, I mean, this one obviously, like, there's a lot of colors here, but I also think this needs a lot of colors because the main colors are so intense that there's not a lot you can, either you put white on top of them or they don't work pretty much. Except for the purples. The purples have that like contrast by default. Okay.
Yeah, there's always a way to make it work. Okay, so what's next here? What's the plan?
Now I'm going to expand these and start exploring brand marks. So my favorite part, I always usually create at least like one circle brand mark. So I'm going to use the type on path tool.
Nice. Perfect. It's already coming together. Why do you think this is your favorite part of the process?
I think it's the fact that when you're doing these brand marks, they can be a bit more abstract. They don't necessarily have to spell out the name all the time. Or you can add additional elements that you may not be able to add in the primary logo and the secondary logo. And usually I make, little icons or illustrations or things like this, and it's just really fun to work with those.
I have to agree with you there. Like, this is way more playful than than the logo or the secondary logo. Here you can really have some fun and lean into kind of like the personality of the brand a little bit more. It doesn't have to be so condensed and tight. Yes, now you're adding some, what is that, a tagline you just made up?
Yeah, I'm thinking like organic. So like syrup's in the main name, so I don't know if I want to say maple syrup because then syrup would be in there twice, but I don't really know what else to add.
Organic, gluten-free. Gluten-free at least is 2 words, but isn't all syrup gluten-free?
Actually, I could just do gluten-free.
Yeah.
Good idea.
It's for the mock-up guys. I'm sure all syrup is gluten-free or something like that, but it's a fictional brand. We're having fun here. What about doing something like established or years or something like that? How do you feel about that?
So I think if the brand was made like, like has a history, it's good. But I do think a lot of times people end up, and I probably even have done this in the past, just use like established 2019 as like a placeholder where it may not necessarily always make sense because, established in 2019 wasn't that long ago. So usually when I do use that, I try to use it if the brand has a really long history, and if they don't, I'll try to put something else.
Right, that brings a little bit more value.
Yeah. I don't know if I do want to do like this.
That's cute. It's almost inaction, right? It's like we're about to whisk something up.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, reminder for everyone in the chat, if you have questions for Kenzi, bring them to us while we're working here. Right now we're in the brand mark process. So if you have questions about that, that would be ideal. But we'll get to all of your questions. I think that those two colors work really nice. Are you going to, play with other color options or just create other brand marks?
Yeah, so like I probably will play with, I mean, most of the time when I do the brand marks, these are, again, the thing that you can like have lots of different color variations. So like obviously this one could have like a different background color and like a different main color many different times. I'm trying to like solidify this. I don't know. I feel like it's too big right now, and I'm not liking how far it's coming out from this little whisk here.
Okay.
Maybe bring it in a bit more. Then bring this down.
Yeah, you're looking at that negative space.
And then like the other thing is, do I want this to be a solid color back here and just leave that white? Like there's so many questions.
There's so many questions, so many decisions throughout this entire process. And I think most of the time you just have to play with all the different options and see which one your eye gravitates to the most.
Yeah, okay, I think this definitely needs to be the negative space there.
I like that. I think that's kind of soothing and looks finished in my eyes. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely gonna keep it for now. And I definitely feel like it has a very youthful, young feel to it. So.
Now, what's next? I love.
You have an egg.
I love the egg.
I will most likely use the rest of these, except maybe the pancakes. But these will probably mostly just be these two for the brand pattern, because I don't really know if I'm going to be able to incorporate these in a brand mark. I did want to try incorporating these somehow.
We have to use those pancakes. They're so cute.
Yeah.
I'm pro pancake stack over here.
I can do.
And I think like the gluten-free really plays well with the pancake icon too. That is cute, and it pairs really nicely with that pancake overall shape too.
So I just expanded this because if I don't, I don't know if anybody watching this has ever noticed this, but like if you make this shape and then if you don't expand it to a shape and you try to like, increase the size, it like morphs into some other shape. Quite strange. But yeah, interesting. So expanded that.
We all have our tips and tricks for surviving when you're creating so many different little icons and shapes. Type on path tool. Perfect. Now, while you're working on these brand marks, I am going to continue to inquire about your career, Kenzi. I'm very interested here. So, you already mentioned how you got started in college, how you landed your first clients. Can you tell us what inspired you to like get on TikTok and start sharing more about your design career there?
Yeah, I mean, I had seen another designer, one or two, like talking about how TikTok was so amazing. And I'm like, this was back a few years ago when it was kind of first around. And I was like, there's no way that would be like a good place to find clients. Like, there's no way. But eventually I was like, you know what? I just need to get on there and try it, see what it's like. And then I was like, holy moly, this actually could be something that works for me. And I think I kind of thought that because once I joined TikTok, I realized how well the organic reach was compared to, Instagram, having been on there for so many years. I got on TikTok and it was just like totally different space. I was reaching way more people. And at first it wasn't like that. I think I made 57 videos before I had my first like viral video. But, once that happened, it really changed things.
That's amazing to hear. And I feel like that's really encouraging for other designers who maybe are struggling with TikTok or are on there having a hard time, don't know where to go. Make 57 videos first and then start, doubting yourself or trying to make more. But it is a game of numbers on TikTok too, right? Like it just takes one of your videos to kind of get pushed out, and then maybe you'll start finding your people. So you
Yeah, I
never
think
know.
like the number one thing with designers that join TikTok is that they give up too early. Like I've talked to a lot of people and they're like, I joined TikTok and nothing's happening, but they just aren't posting enough and then they give up.
Right, exactly. You have to stay consistent for a while for things to really take off, like most social platforms, I feel. But yeah, you got to really put in the work there. What would you say has been your biggest learning for you as an independent business owner and designer? Like, what's the one thing that you've learned while doing this now that you didn't know before you started?
Oh gosh. Well, one, if you're self-employed, taxes suck. Trying to buy a house sucks. So like my plan was like when I was in college, I was like, I'm gonna graduate fully self-employed and I'm gonna go buy a house. Well, you can't buy a house if you don't have 2 years
2 years.
worth of tax returns as a self-employed individual. And I was like, there's no way I'm ever getting a 9 to 5. So I ended up renting, but it worked out totally. The universe handed me the most magnificent house. I was able to get my pet chickens and that worked out. But I think that life is very different when you're self-employed. And I also learned that you really have to set boundaries, which I think a lot of freelancers have trouble doing because they're worried about being mean, or I just think a lot of freelancers get taken advantage of in general because the creative industry is undervalued. And I've really learned that you have got to set your boundaries and like tell people when they're overstepping and not be afraid to say, hey, I need to charge you extra for this because this is going to take more time and this and that.
Right. Yeah. You really have to, you're not just being hired by the client, you are also the boss. Right. So, like, you also can establish those boundaries, establish kind of how you want to be in communication with your client. These are all things that you don't have to leave up to the client. You can dictate because you are your own boss. And I think you're totally right that sometimes, new designers get taken advantage of because they're so eager to get the work and get started, that then they don't remember that they're also the boss. They're not just an employee for this person. So
Yeah.
it's totally a new ball game. What other kind of boundaries that you've set as a designer with your clients?
A big one is how I communicate. So I make it very clear to my clients up front. They are to use my project management system when we start our project together. That is how I communicate. I make it very clear. I do have set business hours. I did have an incident again back when I first started, didn't know what I was doing. A client got my phone number and they started texting me all the time. And that was just, yeah.
We've all been there when the client starts texting you after hours. Hello. That is crazy.
So yeah, that was a big learning curve for me. And also now I only like use Zoom to schedule calls. And there's just a lot that comes with running a business in terms of managing the clients, to having a process, to taxes and having to deal with that side of things that being somebody with a degree, even though I went to school, like they didn't teach me any of this stuff. So it's like a huge learning curve in that area.
100%. I feel like the business part of being a self-employed designer or an entrepreneur is like there's so much to learn, like you said. And, how do you feel about design school not teaching those things?
Oh, I have very strong opinions. I think that design school can be a good option for people who learn in that type of environment, especially for people who want to go work in maybe like a corporate setting,
Mhm.
which it was what I thought originally when I first enrolled in design school. But nowadays, there's just so many alternative learning options that also cost a lot less. And I always encourage people to like look at all their options before deciding if like design school is going to be right for them. Because if you're going to be self-employed, like there's a lot that you're not going to learn in design school and it's going to cost a lot of money.
Yes. And I feel like right now there's so many tutorials like this one. We have a lot of tutorials here on Adobe Live that you can watch, but also YouTube, now TikTok. I know you share a lot of tips on TikTok and other learning platforms that make learning design skills a lot more approachable at a lower price point. So there's definitely a lot of pros and cons to design school, but I feel like you don't know until you do it. You don't know when you go into design school if you're going to need it or not.
Yeah, I feel like, I think a lot of people that I've talked to recently are kind of exploring like community college and, doing that route. And then if they won't, to keep doing that, then they consider enrolling in a 4-year university. And I think that's a really great idea. And I also think I learned most of my really like tangible skills during that first year, but like I did go to a year-round design school as well. So I actually graduated within like 3 years instead of like 4. But after that first year, the learning started kind of dwindling down because I was also learning a lot through YouTube and free online resources as I was building my business. So that really gave me a whole different perspective on things as well.
Yeah, because I feel like design school and most schools have like a curriculum that they've been teaching for a while. But for these kinds of communications fields where things change so fast, right? Like TikTok maybe wasn't a thing when you first got there and then it was when you left. They can't keep up. So that's when you kind of get supplemental, you supplement your education with these kinds of tutorials and online learning that maybe is free, and you start to doubt the value of those, like the latter half of your education. I totally feel that. But you don't know when you first went in, So
Yeah.
it's a trick.
Well, I love that you say that
It's
too,
tricky.
because that's something I've also like been very vocal about, is that the curriculum, when you're going to design school, it just, in my opinion, it can't keep up. It takes years to get curriculum approved, and by the time it's approved, there's already something new happening. So there's just so much out there that the traditional route of college is probably not going to teach you about.
Yeah, it's definitely not going to teach you everything, but I do think that there's a place for it if you really thrive in a structured environment, if you need that kind of accountability. There are benefits to it. It's really down to individual kind of preference and need, how much you're willing to teach yourself versus, in a kind of formal education setting.
It's actually really funny that you brought up this topic, because I do have a podcast, and the episode I released last week was actually about my experience in design school. My friend and I graduated together, and I had her come onto the podcast, and like we both kind of shared our experiences, and we touched on a lot of these topics. And I think it's also a very controversial topic, because I just have seen and noticed that a lot of the older generation of designers are like really pushing, like, you have to go get a degree, you have to do this and that. And then younger designers like myself and some others are like, no, you don't have to. There's many different ways to learn design.
I totally agree with you. I may or may not have already listened to that episode and strategically brought this up because I knew it was a great topic for us. But I genuinely also think like it's something that needs to be talked about openly, and because design school is so expensive, like a lot of higher education, and so we really need to consider everything that goes into it before you just jump into the program. Can you tell us the name of your podcast for those in the chat and those who are watching who maybe don't know and want to get a little bit more on this topic?
Yeah, so it is called the Unapologetic Designer Podcast. And basically, the name kind of says it all. I talk all sorts of controversial design topics unapologetically, and you can even submit your own opinions anonymously through my podcast Instagram page, which I think is really awesome, because I love seeing, people submit stuff and write, deep in their feelings about design topics, and, their identity is hidden. So I think people feel really comfortable sharing that way.
That is amazing. Everyone go check out her podcast and maybe submit some hot takes if you have any. So you might be featured in the next episode. I am definitely subscribed. I'm definitely continue listening. So check it out. And I wanted to ask you here, we have a question from Lillian Lang. I hope I'm saying your name correct, Lillian. So her question is, I hear brand mark and submark used interchangeably. Do you treat both differently?
I treat them the same. I think that that's just like, again, personal preference terminology. And it's kind of like typeface versus font. Like now they're being used interchangeably, even though they're technically like different terms.
Different. Yeah.
I had at one point when I hired my junior designer, she was like titling things submark. And I'm like, what is this? I call it a brand mark. So it's just like, that personal, like, what do you want to call it and how do you want to describe it? I think as long as you can communicate to your client what it is, the purpose it serves, I don't think it really matters what you call it.
There you go, Lillian. There's your answer. They're pretty much interchangeable. And then another question here that we got a lot while we were talking about design school was this question from Jess Villano and also from Carrie Clark. What project management software do you use?
So I use Asana, and for me, that just was the most simple, easiest project management software for me to use. There's a lot of other options out there. Okay, side note, I think I'm just gonna we've got these two solid brand marks. For the sake of time, I'm gonna move on to the brand pattern because I am struggling here to come up with a good third one. So for the sake of time, we're just gonna stick with
That's the beauty of a fictional brand, folks. We have two brand marks, sub marks. They're good. They look adorable. I personally love them. Why not move on?
Yeah.
And we still have so many cute icons still to use.
Yeah. What were we talking about before? I literally lost my train of thought.
No worries. That happens when we're working live and we're multitasking here. The question was about your project management software, which you said was Asana. And yeah, a little bit more about why you chose that one, maybe.
Yeah. So I am not an automation gal. I do not like to set up a bunch of automation stuff and have it doing all the invoices, and because a lot of my projects are custom and everybody has different needs, so I just that's just not my thing. And I found Asana is less automated than a lot of the other ones out there, like Honeybook. I do know a lot of designers who use that works great for them, but I always kind of found that stuff overwhelming, and Asana was just like this straightforward digital checklist. I have a little template I reuse every time for my projects, and my clients find it easy to use. It keeps us on track. It does what it needs to do. So that's kind of why I chose Asana.
There you go, guys. Check it out. Maybe it'll work for you. I know it's all up to personal preference, but it's always cool to see what everyone else uses. Aside from, of course, using all of these Adobe apps, are there any other softwares you use throughout your design process with your clients? Just Asana, or is there anything else?
I do use Hello Bonsai for my contracts, proposals, and invoices. So that is the only other software I use. Because Asana does not have invoicing and stuff built into it, you do have to have another software that will do that, and that is where Hello Bonsai comes in. But other than that, I pretty much just stick to Adobe Illustrator, Adobe Photoshop, and then those other Zoom, Calendly for scheduling tools and stuff like that.
Amazing. I know everyone is always curious to see what people use in their process, so I figured I'd ask for you guys who, if you were wondering about her project management software, I figured you'd want to know about anything else too. So tell us here what we're going to do with these illustrations or icons to build out a pattern. What are you thinking here?
So I need the pancakes. So basically I'm just going to take all of these and use the pattern tool. And I was trying to add a little bit of color, as you can see on the egg here. I don't know if I'm going to stick with that though. Let's see what happens with the pancakes. Add that, because I always try to think about okay, once I make a pattern, it's going to have to go on top of a solid color or a background. So I don't want to get too crazy with different colors.
Yeah, I get what you mean. And what do you usually use brand patterns for? Where do you see them being applied once you're done with them?
Yeah, so primarily, I mean, number one, websites. It's always a cool feature to add on a website, maybe in the background, or some sort of element to the website in that area. But then also I've had clients use it as tissue paper. I've had clients get their brand patterns printed on their custom cups.
Cool.
my ice cream client recently got them printed on their actual ice cream cups. Like those are so cute.
Oh, I bet those are adorable. I love seeing patterns on tissue paper and just like any collateral that's exciting. Oh my gosh, what just happened? I feel like I was not expecting that. Please tell me how you got here.
Yeah, so basically I just selected all the elements that I want in the pattern and I went to Object, Pattern, and hit Make, which it says this right now because I'm already in the pattern mode. But if
Got it.
I wasn't there, it would say Make Pattern. And then this little thing right here is kind of how the elements are aligning. And usually I will play around with this until I get to something that I'm like, ooh, yeah, I like how that looks. I think I might actually want to add like a fun little script handwritten font in here just to kind of give it something else. And I think that this like handwritten script might actually be able to work for this brand. So let's see here.
This is amazing. Kenzi, we have about, we only have like 10, 15 minutes left just to give you a little heads up.
Okay. Maybe we can finish this.
I bet that we can.
I don't know. Here, I think I need to go out.
You're like overwhelmed. You're overwhelmed with the fonts. You're like, I don't know anymore. That happens when you like bring up all the fonts that you have.
Let's see. I actually know of one off the top of my head. Let's see what that looks like. Oh, doesn't have a glyph. Okay.
Ooh.
Bummer.
Making your life tough. We'll have to go with another one. So many good font options here. What will she choose, you guys? What will she choose?
And I have so many. A long time ago, when I first started, I used scripts more often. So I had like downloaded this massive package. And now there's a bunch in here that I just don't really use, but they're there.
They're interrupting you now at this point.
Basically, yeah. Because a lot of
there's some playful fonts on here. I feel like that could work. Yeah.
See, and this one could work, but it's like the #1 most used script font ever. So it's like, I don't know. I don't think I really want to use that one because of that.
Gotcha. There is that like push and pull, especially if you've used it for another client. Do you ever just like stop using that font if you've used it for someone else?
I think it's quite rare that I reuse fonts, and if I do, it's usually for a totally different industry, like the client that I'm reusing the font for. I think maybe there's been one occasion where I had used the same font and it was both clients were photographers, but like the brand had a totally different vibe, so that worked out okay.
Got it. Okay, yeah, that's interesting. I think definitely if they're not in the same industry, I don't see the harm there at all. Now we have a question while you're selecting here and deciding on the fonts. We have a question from Lillian. Once again, do you make your brand guidelines in Illustrator? I know that we've been working in Illustrator this whole time, but when you actually send it off, do you create it in Illustrator too?
Yeah, so basically this entire thing that I'm working on right now is what I send to my clients. And, once it's finished, we'll have like, essentially, if I was sending this to a legit client, we would have the color palette, the color codes, the typography, and everything that they need would be in this entire presentation here. And I just export it as a PDF, which if we get that far, I might actually be able to like export that and kind of show what that would look like.
Yes, we can probably get to that, if anything, tomorrow too, because we'll continue working on this brand tomorrow. But let's keep working on it today, you guys. Don't get ahead of me here. And then another question here from Derek McLennan. How do you structure your day with running your design business, podcast, and multiple social media platforms? That's definitely such a challenge. So I'm curious to see what you have to say on that.
Yeah, so I'm like I'm the type of my personality type is like the type that will just wing it. I'm not very like, I'm not very structured in the way that I completely plan out my day, which I know that some people like they have to do that because that's, how they function. But for me, I'm more of, okay, I have these projects. Let's, this one's our priority. So I should work on this in the morning and then, okay, break, let me go on social media. If I feel inspired to post something, I'll post. If I don't, I don't. And the only real commitment, I've set for myself is make sure my client deadlines are hit, no matter what. And then my podcast episode comes out every Monday. So I just have to make sure that I do find time to record and edit that prior to Monday morning, or on Monday morning. If I have to edit it, I'll do that and then post it. So I'm pretty lenient in the way that I don't really set too much of a strict hour by hour timeline for myself. And that seems just to be the way I kind of flow.
That's amazing that you can make it work like that and kind of go with your own like rhythm as opposed to sticking to a tight schedule. Some people thrive on a tight schedule, others don't. So there you go, Derek. I hope that answers your question. And this is starting to really come together here, Kenzi.
Yeah, I hope so. I think it is. But now I'm having the issue of, okay, now this text is so long.
Right. The text is long. Might have to get stacked.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's try it. I'm going to copy that just in case I want it back. Oh, wait, can I not?
Because you're inside the pattern maker.
Here, let me see. I can do it like this. Can I? No? I thought it would at least.
You got to select the whole thing, maybe.
I don't think that it's going to let me. Oh, wait. Okay, now I have it.
There you go.
Anytime you're in like this pattern mode, it definitely
makes things a little bit trickier.
All right, now let me group this back together. Okay, that's going to work for sure. And now I can probably do a different layout.
That's really cool that you can still be tweaking those elements and adjusting the pattern maker at the same time. I haven't played with this tool myself, but I feel like now I have to.
I love this tool. I can't believe you haven't ever used it.
I just do them by hand. I don't know. But now I'm like, maybe I got to do this.
This is one of the first tools I ever learned, because when I first started getting into freelance, I also had discovered like pattern design, and I was really into it. So patterns have always been like definitely one of my favorite things to create.
They definitely feel like so satisfying, because then you can apply them across so many different like elements: web, collateral, cone cups, or whatever you mentioned earlier. There's so many different ways to apply them. Oh, I think we're totally getting somewhere.
They're one of the most tedious things to create, though, because I am very peculiar about the alignment of things. So like now I don't like that this whisk and this is like right beside each other. So now I'm going to try like a different layout, and I do stuff like that when I'm working with the pattern tool all the time.
Definitely. I definitely think there's a trick to it. There's an art to it. And I also think like the amount of elements that you start with also influences what your options are. So I can see how you can get in the weeds real quick.
I think having less elements is obviously easier to work with, but it's less visually intriguing when you have...
Yeah, because then it gets too repetitive.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I wanted to make these little icons, kind of use them.
There's definitely an art to it, finding the perfect balance between all of these elements. But I am very satisfied with this pattern tool, learning about this pattern tool. I had no idea about it. Let me know in the chat if you've used this pattern tool before in Illustrator, because I'm definitely going to go run and use it now. Oh, I feel like this feels really close.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking. It's definitely almost there.
It's like playing with the size of everything. Maybe just that whisk.
Yeah, he needs a little turning. Okay, what do we think about this?
I think that works.
Yeah, I think so too. And
it's so funny because before everything was competing, and now suddenly everything's like perfectly in pattern.
And if I wanted to fill that negative space, I could do a little dot just to see what that might look like. I kind of want to just test 1 or 2 in here.
Just a heads up, Kenzi, we have about 8 minutes left on the stream here, just to give you a little warning. I like that. I was thinking it could have even been one of those splashes that you made. I know that's not available to you right now, but
Yeah, no, I definitely thought of that too. I could just draw one out. I mean, I think it's just kind of
yeah.
That. I don't think I like that though.
Yeah, it does
I
fill
think
the
I,
space nicely, but it is kind of chunky.
I think I kind of like actually the amount of negative space with these little dots.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we need one more or not.
It does create a nice little rhythm.
Okay.
I like that.
And now, since we've done that, and that could actually be the other brand mark, just a simple script.
Just
perfect.
the simple script. Perfect. Where did the pattern go?
It is inside of the swatch up here. So when you save it, yeah, it goes up there. So I can actually go like this and then select that, and there it is.
There it is, the beautiful pattern we all just saw come to life right before our eyes. Oh my gosh, that was amazing. So satisfying. Could you end up, I know, Voodoo Vow, I was so scared. I was like, where did it go? I totally agree. I was like, where did it go? That would happen to me on my own. I'd be like panicking. So I'm so glad you were able to simply bring that back. Now, why don't you give us a recap once you're done setting this up here of everything that we did today and maybe what we can expect to see tomorrow. But right now, what are you making here? Was that just for the brand identity proposal?
Yeah, I have like these numbers and trying to make sure you can still see that one here.
Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying.
Anyways, not a big deal. Patterns there. Let's save this and then we will do a quick recap of everything. So
yeah, give us a little walkthrough of everything we've done today because you have it so perfectly laid out.
All right. So we started with, the primary logo. We've got this guy down here. And then we did some secondary logos, really organic, fun background. And from there, we moved on to the brand marks, which we now have 3 lovely brand marks, which I'm super, again, my favorite things. Those are just so cute. They might be cuter than the primary logo. That's okay though. And then we have this lovely brand pattern, which I'm really happy with. And maybe we can put that on a mockup eventually. But tomorrow we will be working on the label design. And I do actually have like a syrup bottle mockup that we're going to be playing around with. So that'll probably take quite a while to, get that structured the way that we want it. And then just kind of filling out the rest of this. So setting up the color palette, maybe giving the colors some cool little names here, putting the logo over top of an image, seeing what that looks like, and then kind of putting everything together on a brand board here and seeing, what it all looks like when it's beside each other working together.
This is lovely. I am riding the high of that pattern. I feel like that was amazing. We do have a little time here, Kenzi. Do you want to maybe show us, can you color that pattern in? That was exactly what I was gonna ask next. Like, do you ever present like the black and white version and then maybe a color version?
So usually when I am presenting patterns to clients, I'll present it in like maybe 1 or 2 colors. So like I would maybe do this, and then if we want to do another one, do we want to try like all the colors and just see what it looks like?
I'm just curious what that would look like. And I think that it's really cool. The pattern just automatically colors all of those elements like in unison.
Okay.
As opposed to like one by one.
Here is our color palette. I know it's really tiny, but that's okay.
This is just a quick tip for you guys at the end of the stream here for those who are interested in making their own color, how to make their own color, make their own pattern, how to color it.
Let's try. Well, now it colored one of
it colored the dots.
Wait, I think, okay, yeah, I was like, there's still copied
they're still in here somewhere.
Well, that's the one thing about going back and like editing it later. You have to deal with like putting the colors in here. I think I need to go get the purple. So since I opened up this pattern and actually
it got a little bit more complicated than we expected here.
So what I'm going to do now is click this and put pattern 2 and hit save a copy. because I had actually opened up that same pattern and then hit cancel to ensure that this original pattern still remains there.
Oh, okay, okay.
So now I'm going to take these and go back. Where's the second one? Did it not save it?
Maybe Illustrator is giving us a little bit of a hard time, Kenzi, but I don't think we need to sweat it. We learned plenty in this stream. There's plenty that we went over, guys. All of this we got through like halfway through this brand identity. And tomorrow we're going to cover so much more. Now, this is a reminder for everyone. Go follow Kenzi across all of her platforms. She's on TikTok. She's on YouTube. She's on Instagram. She's also got a podcast. However you want to consume content from Kenzi, she's got it. So go find it and make sure you subscribe. And of course, stay tuned for tomorrow where we continue working on this brand identity, right, Kenzi? It's going to be the same one, just another go to finish it up.
We are going to continue doing the label design, continue playing around with this pattern a little bit more because I definitely wanted to see it with those other colors in there.
Perfect. I am very excited for tomorrow, you guys. So Kenzi and I will be back tomorrow at 12 p.m. Pacific for part 2. Now stay tuned for the creative encore of the XD Creative Challenge with Brandon Grossi right after this stream, followed by another episode of How To with Claddy. This week, learn how to design a mood board in InDesign. Adobe Live will be back tomorrow morning with part 2 of editorial photo editing with Bella Kotak. Thanks so much for being here with us today. Thank you, Kenzi, for an amazing stream and brand identity. It just came to life today. So I'll see you guys all back here, same time, same place. Thank you once again, everyone.
Thank you. Hope to see you all tomorrow.
Bye-bye.